I should have known from the cheap price, $440 for 6 nights in a cabin close to Disney World, that this place was too good to be true. However, I never expected it to be as bad as this. Literal weeds were sprouting from the gutters, and I had to lift my daughter out of the overgrown yard for fear of snakes. Aren't they a terrible problem in Florida? As we approached the door of the rundown cabin, I heard a creaking noise from inside. My wife looked at me apprehensively. It was clear that she didn't want to be there any more than I did, but we had already paid. I figured we might as well see if the inside was any better. Before I could even knock on the door, a skeleton answered. At least, that's what she looked like. She was a little old woman with her skin pulled so tightly over her bones that it looked like if you cut her, she wouldn't even bleed. She smiled at us, and I saw all her teeth were as black as coal. Come in, she welcomed us, shambling to the side and throwing out one of her bony arms into a room comprised of dust and furniture covered by dirty tan sheets. I've just finished cleaning. She glanced at me, probably noticing my disgust, and asked if the cabin met my expectations. I cleared my throat awkwardly and said, "It looked different in the pictures." She turned back to the cabin, looking around with milky eyes. How could she see through those cataracts? "Well, my husband took the pictures a while ago, but he hasn't felt up to doing much lately." She called over her shoulder, "Ain't that right, Bill?" No answer came. "He's hard of hearing." The woman ushered us in. The smell of the place was overpowering, and my nose started to itch. The grimy carpet was covered with stains that looked like they had been there for decades. My wife whispered to me, "We should leave. We can go get a hotel or something." However badly I wanted to, I knew we couldn't afford it after spending so much on Disney tickets. We'd only be here to sleep at the end of the day, right? "The bedroom you'll be in is this way, but you'll have free reign of the house while you stay," the woman said as she hobbled forward. We passed the kitchen, and there was rotting food covering the countertops. Cockroaches scurried about the floor. Maybe the hotel wasn't such a bad idea after all. When we entered the bedroom, it was as if someone had purposefully dirtied it. The entire room was coated with filth, dead insects, and dust. There was a lump in the middle of the bed. "Oh, Bill," the woman exclaimed, "what are you doing in here? Get up." She threw back the dirtied green comforter to reveal a putrid sight. My daughter shrieked. There was a dead body, his face bloated and jaundiced. Cockroaches crawled all over his body, including one stirring within his empty eye socket. "I told you we were having guests, dear. Now go back to the other room." She turned to my wife with an apologetic look on her face. "Sorry, can you just give us one moment?" We immediately left, got in our car, and sped off down the street until we reached the closest police station. Then we told them about the blind old lady and her rotting husband. I think it's safe to say that my family will never use Airbnb again. A couple of months ago, I was scheduled to go to Chicago on a work trip. My company handled all the accommodations, including lodging and travel expenses. At first, I was happy about this. It meant I didn't have to spend any money. But then I realized they rented me the cheapest, most unreliable car possible. I tried to be optimistic about my lodgings. After all, my boss told me he had hand-picked the location where I would stay. However, he had a reputation for being one of those Michael Scott types, always taking the jokes too far. Thankfully, when I arrived at the Airbnb, it seemed normal. It wasn't anything special, just your run-of-the-mill studio apartment complex. I quickly found my assigned unit, happy to see it was on the ground floor. A code locked the apartment. I fished out my phone and entered the number that my boss had sent me. 1359. I entered the code and the input screen buzzed red. Error, try again. After checking the message from my boss again, I confirmed that the code was indeed 1359. Hoping that I just put it in incorrectly, I tried again. Buzz, error, try again. At this point, I was starting to get frustrated. Many things were running through my mind, including the prevalent idea that my boss had purposefully supplied me with the wrong number so that I would have to call him and he could laugh at me. I tried the code once more before calling the insufferable man. No answer. I swore under my breath, which caught the attention of a passerby. "Hey," she greeted me. "Are you having some trouble?" Sighing, I looked up to see a beautiful woman with chestnut-colored hair and an armful of grocery bags. "You must be the Airbnb guest," she said. "Hi, I'm Marley. I help the owner by cleaning out these rental properties. Are you having difficulties getting in?" I explained what was happening, showing her the code on my phone. "I see the problem," Marley said. "Your boss messed up one of the numbers. Try 2359. I did, and the panel flashed green. "Welcome." "There you go," Marley smiled. "If you need any more help, just let me know. I'm in the next unit over." I thanked her and stumbled into my apartment. I was tired from the drive and wanted to get at least a few hours of rest before my afternoon meeting. Thankfully, this little apartment, devoid of anything other than a full-sized bed and an outdated television, was perfect for that. When I got up to use the restroom, I noticed strange stains in the bathtub. They were faded maroon. Perhaps it was rust damage or someone had gotten a nasty nick while shaving. Either way, I was too sleepy to investigate further. I got some rest and went to my meeting as planned. Everything went well and I was feeling happy. Being out of the office felt nice. When I returned to my apartment, Marley was standing outside my door. She had 2 mugs of coffee in hand. "Hey," she said, "it's a little chilly today, and the last resident broke the coffee machine in your unit, so I figured I'd offer you a cup." I couldn't tell if she was interested in me or just being nice, but I wanted it to be the former. I invited her inside. She accepted, giving me my coffee with a chirpy, "Drink up." It tasted good, sweeter than I usually like, but with nutty undertones of what I believed were almonds. We talked for a bit, but then this sudden wave of fatigue washed over me. I could barely hold my eyes open. "I'm sorry about this," Marley said with sincerity as she gripped my shoulder. She stood up and went to the door. I heard her call to someone, "All right, he's ready," before the darkness consumed me. I don't remember what happened in the following 2 days. Just a vague sense of pain associated with the smell of iron. I didn't truly wake up until 3 days later in a hospital bed. Blood was being suctioned out of a surgical tube, passing through my nose. I had vicious abdominal scars zigzagging across my stomach and on either side of my body, where my kidneys should have been. Susie, an old girlfriend of mine, ran an Airbnb. She'd been left her grandfather's house after his death, and while she was never strapped for cash, I think something about being in that old, creaking house all by herself unnerved her. She said it was haunted. Susie was highly extroverted, the type of person who could go up to a stranger and prod at them until she found a common point of interest. It was exhausting to watch, but also kind of magical. There aren't many people in this world that are capable of forming meaningful connections with just about everybody they run into. But Susie was gifted in that regard. Because of Susie's nature, she was an eternal optimist, always looking for the good in people. I guess that's why she decided to approve of a group of guests who claimed they would be in town for MurderCon. She was excited about it, thinking it was going to be some sort of true crime convention, and asking me questions about what I thought the panels would be like or who would go. However, neither of us could find any trace of a murder con in the general vicinity. A little disappointed, Susie said it must have been a private event, but being a true crime fan, she hoped that one of the temporary tenants would slide an invitation her way. As the date of their stay grew closer, I realized I'd forgotten to ask off for work. It was a pretty large booking, 10 people, and I wanted to be there to assist, however I could. I usually helped Susie greet guests and ensure the rooms were okay. Maybe it was due to the true crime podcasts she played in the car, or my natural pessimistic inclination. But I didn't like the idea of Susie being all alone with a group of strangers. However, I'd met a bunch of true crime nuts through Susie and found that they were primarily harmless and were often female. I was sure she'd be safe with a bunch of murder con nerds. She assured me, saying that everything was going to be all right. I believed her. So before any of the guests arrived that night, I left for work, leaving her all alone. I couldn't check my phone on the job, but I left it on, telling Susie to call if she needed anything. Nothing came. I got home that morning expecting to see a line of cars in the driveway, but it was empty. No guests. Confused, I started up the porch, noticing that the front door was ajar. A cold chill ran over me. I pushed open the door, and there was Susie. MurderCon wasn't a conference for true crime fans, but for actual murderers. They'd mutilated her body and strung her organs around the chandelier, like tinsel on a Christmas tree. Susie's limp form dangling over the main entryway will forever be burned into my mind.